Hello. I ask for your subscription to grow the channel and increasingly improve the quality of the stories. And now, let's get started. I need to get this warning out before they find me. If you're watching this, stay away from Black Rock RV Park. My name is Marcus Reynolds, and for the past 8 years, I've been documenting RV destinations across America for my YouTube channel. As a former Navy SEAL, I thought I'd seen it all, but what I encountered in that godforsaken desert will haunt me forever. It started 3 days ago when I arrived at Black Rock RV Park, 15 miles from the small town of Gerlach, Nevada. The place seemed perfect for my next video. Remote, historical, with those abandoned silver mines that my subscribers love so much. The first red flag should have been the complete absence of other campers. In 8 years of traveling, I'd never seen an RV park this empty during peak season. The old caretaker, Tom, mentioned something about recent incidents keeping people away, but I brushed it off. I was more focused on setting up my equipment, cameras, drones, and lighting for the overnight shots I planned to take. My Winnebago Voyage 2023 was perfectly positioned near the old water tower, giving me a great view of the desert landscape for my intro shots. If only I'd paid more attention to Tom's trembling hands and nervous glances. That first evening, while reviewing my initial footage, I picked up something strange in the background. At first, I thought it was just interference, or a technical glitch, shadows moving against the natural flow of the setting sun. My military training kicked in, that sixth sense telling me something wasn't right. I switched to my thermal camera feed and froze. There were heat signatures moving around the perimeter of the park, dozens of them, but they were wrong somehow. The thermal patterns were all off, showing temperatures well below normal human range. The sun was setting when I heard the first scream. It came from the direction of the caretaker's office, a sound I hadn't heard since my deployment days. The kind of scream that means someone is dying in agony. I grabbed my go bag, old habits die hard, and my handheld camera. As a content creator, I've learned to document everything, but as a former SEAL, I also grabbed the K-bar knife I always keep nearby. The desert wind had picked up, carrying with it a smell I recognized from war zones. Death. I didn't know it then, but those first few hours would be my last moments of relative safety. The setting sun cast long shadows across the park, and in those shadows, something was stirring. My camera picked up a movement near the old mine entrance. Jerky, unnatural movement that made my skin crawl. Years of military training told me to get out fast, but my journalistic instincts urged me to investigate. That decision would prove to be my first mistake, but nowhere near my last. Looking back, I should have remembered what my commanding officer used to say. Curiosity kills more than cats. The old Silver Peak mine entrance stood like a maw in the gathering darkness, its rusted support beams groaning in the desert wind. My flashlight beam caught fragments of recent activity, fresh tire tracks, modern equipment half hidden under tarps, and warning signs that looked far too new for an abandoned mine. The government seals on some of the equipment made my blood run cold. 8 years in the SEALs taught me to recognize classified military hardware, and this stuff definitely wasn't meant for mining. As I approached the mine entrance, my camera's display started glitching. The digital interference pattern looked familiar, similar to what we'd experienced near certain military testing sites. The screams had stopped, but something worse had replaced them, a wet, shuffling sound echoing from the darkness. My thermal camera was going haywire, showing clusters of cold spots moving against the desert heat. Training kicked in, and I found myself instinctively moving into a defensive stance, knife ready. Then I saw Tom, or what used to be Tom, the caretaker's body moved with jerky, broken motions like a puppet with tangled strings. His skin had taken on a grayish tint, and dark veins pulsed visibly beneath the surface. But it was his eyes that stopped me cold. Milky white and completely devoid of consciousness, yet somehow tracking my every movement. The camera was still rolling when he charged, moving with impossible speed. My SEAL training took over, and I sidestepped his attack, but what happened next defied everything I knew about human anatomy. Tom's head turned a full 180 degrees to track me. jaw unhinging like a snake's. I ran. Not my proudest moment as a former SEAL, but sometimes survival means knowing when to retreat. Behind me, more figures were emerging from the mine entrance, all showing the same jerky movements, all with those horrible milky eyes. My camera caught glimpses of military fatigues among the twisted forms, suggesting that whatever had happened here wasn't limited to the local population. I made it back to my RV just as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. The desert night brings a particular kind of darkness, but this darkness seemed to pulse with unnatural life. That's when the military radio I'd spotted earlier in the mine crackled to life. Through bursts of static, I caught fragments that chilled me more than the encroaching darkness. Containment breach. Project Lazarus compromised. Site is lost. Initiate Protocol Omega. The transmission cut off in a burst of static, but the message was clear. Whatever was happening here was no accident. As I barricaded myself in my RV, I could hear them gathering outside. Dozens, maybe hundreds of shuffling feet on the desert gravel. The night would be long, and I knew sleep wasn't an option. The first attack came just before midnight. They surrounded my RV in a coordinated pattern that suggested some remnant of military training still lingered in their infected minds. My security cameras showed them testing the doors and windows, not mindlessly clawing but methodically searching for weak points. These weren't the mindless zombies of Hollywood movies. They retained enough intelligence to make them far more dangerous. The way they moved, the way they communicated through guttural clicks and hisses, it all spoke of some horrible fusion of military precision and primal hunger. I used my time between attacks to review the footage I'd captured, hoping to understand what I was facing. The thermal imaging revealed something horrifying. The infection, or whatever it was, spread through bite wounds with frightening speed. I watched through my cameras as one of the infected bit a coyote that had wandered too close. Within minutes, the animal's thermal signature dropped dramatically and it joined the ranks of the infected. The implications were terrifying. This wasn't just a local outbreak. If even one of these things made it to a populated area, the infection could spread exponentially. The second attack came as I was trying to send a warning using my satellite uplink. They had cut the power to the RV park, but my backup generator kept my equipment running. The infected seemed to react to the electronic signals. Every time I tried to transmit, they became more aggressive. Through my cameras, I could see more of them emerging from the mine, some in hazmat suits torn and stained with something dark. Whatever experiment had gone wrong down there, it was clear the researchers had become victims of their own creation. The military's attempt at containment had failed spectacularly. Around 3 a.m., they changed tactics. The infected began using tools, rocks to break windows, poles to pry open vents. One particularly disturbing specimen, still wearing the tattered remains of a colonel's uniform, directed the others with those horrible clicking sounds. My military training helped me identify weak points in their strategy, but there were so many of them. For every one I managed to repel, 3 more took its place. The RV's reinforced windows wouldn't hold forever. I needed a plan, and I needed it fast. That's when I remembered the mining explosives I'd seen earlier near the entrance. If I could reach them, I might be able to seal the mine, the apparent source of the infection. But getting there meant crossing 50 yards of open ground, swarming with infected. As I weighed my options, a new sound cut through the night. Helicopter rotors in the distance. Someone was coming, but I couldn't be sure if they were coming to help or to clean up loose ends. Given what I'd discovered about Project Lazarus, I had to assume the worst. The helicopter's approach scattered the infected temporarily, buying me precious time. I used the distraction to make a break for the mine entrance, my camera still recording everything. The night vision footage shows what I found inside, a state-of-the-art research facility hidden behind the facade of an abandoned mine. The government had been experimenting with something they shouldn't have, something that combined military applications with biological engineering. The scattered documents I found painted a horrifying picture of an attempt to create soldiers who could continue fighting even after clinical death. Deeper in the facility, I found the source of the infection. A containment unit marked with biohazard symbols had been breached from the inside. The walls were covered in scratch marks that seemed to radiate outward from the unit, telling a story of something desperate to escape. The nearby computer terminal still functioned on backup power, and what I found in the research logs made me understand why the military might want to clean this place off the map. They had succeeded in their experiment beyond their wildest nightmares. The infected weren't just reanimated, they were evolving. The helicopter landed outside, and through the facility's security feeds I watched as a team in Black Ops gear deployed. They weren't there to save anyone. Their orders were clearly to eliminate all witnesses and evidence. I recognized their patches from my SEAL days. This was a sanitization team. They moved with practiced efficiency, setting charges at key points around the facility. They planned to bury this whole operation, literally, but they hadn't counted on the infected being capable of tactical thinking. As I watched, the creatures set up an ambush with frightening coordination. What happened next was chaos caught in night vision green. The infected swarmed the team from multiple directions, displaying the kind of tactical awareness that made the military want to weaponize them in the first place. The soldiers' weapons proved less effective than they'd expected. These things didn't go down easily, and every fallen soldier added to the infected ranks within minutes. I used the chaos to access the facility's mainframe, downloading everything I could onto my portable drive. The world needed to know what had happened here, even if I didn't survive to tell the tale. Time was running out. The charges the team had set were on automatic timers, and the infected were between me and the exit. I could hear them in the tunnels. Getting closer, those awful clicking sounds echoing off the walls. The thermal camera showed their cold signatures converging on my position. The facility's lights flickered, backup power failing, and in the darkness those milky eyes seemed to glow with an inner light. I had the evidence, but now I needed to find a way out of this nightmare. The timer on the nearest charge showed less than 10 minutes remaining. I'm recording this final warning from a hidden location. I managed to escape the facility just before the charges detonated, collapsing the entire mine system. The explosion took out most of the infected inside, but I know some of them had already escaped into the desert. The thermal camera footage proves it. There are cold signatures moving across the landscape, slowly but steadily heading toward populated areas. I've sent copies of my evidence to multiple secure locations. If anything happens to me, the truth will still come out. The military will try to cover this up. They'll say it was a mining accident, or maybe a gas leak. They'll clean up the visible evidence and deny everything else. But I know what I saw, and more importantly, I have proof. The infection is unlike anything we've ever seen. It doesn't just kill, it transforms. The infected retain enough intelligence to make them nearly impossible to contain once they escape. And some did escape. I've been tracking their movements, and they're learning, adapting. Each generation seems more capable than the last. If you're watching this, here's what you need to know. Stay away from Black Rock RV Park and the surrounding desert. The military has quarantined the area, but they're covering up the real reason. If you see anyone exhibiting unusual behavior, jerky movements, milky eyes, or making clicking sounds, do not approach them. Don't try to help them. Just run. The infection spreads through any fluid contact and it works fast. I've seen it transform people in minutes. The infected are strongest at night, and they're drawn to electronic signals. They can think, plan, and coordinate their attacks. I don't know how much longer I can stay ahead of them. My thermal cameras show more cold signatures approaching my location every night. The military is looking for me too. I've had to disable my RV's GPS and only move during daylight hours. The infected are spreading, establishing new nests in abandoned buildings and caves across the desert. They're waiting, growing stronger, multiplying. The government thinks they can contain this, but they're wrong. I've seen what these things can do, how they think, how they adapt. This is my final warning. If you value your life, stay away from Black Rock Desert. Don't go looking for evidence. You'll only find something worse than death. I can hear them outside now, those familiar clicks getting closer. My camera's battery is dying and the sun is setting. If you're watching this, I probably didn't make it, but maybe my warning will save others from making the same mistake. This is Marcus Reynolds, signing off for the last time. Remember, they're evolving, they're spreading, and they're hungry. God help us all. The steady humming of my RV's heater is the only sound keeping me sane right now. My hands are shaking as I type this warning on my satellite phone. The last piece of electronics still working. Everything else is dead, killed by the unnatural cold that follows it. My name is Emma Chen, and if you're reading this, stay away from the Boundary Waters during winter. What the locals say about the hungry spirits isn't superstition. I should have listened to the old Ojibwe woman at the gas station who begged me not to go further north. The winter belongs to the Wendigo, she said. I thought it would make great content for my channel. Local legends, stunning winter landscapes, and the northern lights. I was wrong. So terribly wrong. The first signs were subtle, easy to dismiss when you're used to solo travel in remote locations. My propane heater started consuming fuel twice as fast as normal, even though the temperature readout showed typical Minnesota winter numbers. The local classic rock station kept cutting out, replaced by what sounded like whispered words in a language I didn't recognize. I blamed it on the weather, on faulty equipment, on anything that made sense. But then I started noticing the tracks in the snow around my RV each morning. Huge, elongated footprints that looked almost human, but wrong. The stride was too long, the impressions too deep for any normal creature. My drone footage showed them appearing suddenly in the middle of pristine snowfields with no trail leading to or from them. 3 days ago, I captured something on my cameras that still haunts me. I was setting up for a night shoot of the Aurora Borealis. My RV parked near the edge of a frozen lake. The temperature had dropped to -40, cold even for a Minnesota winter, and the aurora was putting on an incredible show. Through my camera's viewfinder, I saw something impossible. Where the northern lights danced, a figure moved, not like a shadow or a reflection, but like something using the lights themselves as a curtain to cross between worlds. It was impossibly tall and thin, with limbs that bent in ways that made my mind recoil. When I checked the footage later, the temperature stamp on the video showed -120 degrees in that specific frame. The locals call this area the dead zone during winter, and now I know why. Every year, hikers and campers disappear, without a trace. The authorities blame the harsh conditions, but the indigenous people know better. They've lived with this threat for generations, marking safe zones with ancient symbols and never traveling alone during the winter months. I found one of these markers yesterday, a complex pattern carved into an old cedar tree. The wood around the carving was warm to the touch, despite the freezing temperatures. An elder I spoke with in town had warned me about these markers. If you find one, you're already in its hunting ground. The symbols don't keep it away anymore. They're just warnings for those who know how to read them. Last night, it finally revealed itself fully. I was huddled in my RV, reviewing my footage and planning an escape route, when every electronic device I had went dead simultaneously. The temperature plunged so low that the windows began to crack. Through the frosted glass, I saw it. A creature. That seemed to be made of winter itself. Its body was like stretched sinew and ice, easily 15 feet tall with antlers that scraped the sky. But its face, God, its face was the worst part. It wore the features of its past victims like a patchwork mask, each one frozen in a moment of terror. As it circled my RV, I heard voices calling out. People I knew were dead, begging for help in their own voices. The Wendigo is a mimic, using the voices of those it's taken to lure in new prey. My RV has become both sanctuary and prison. The creature can't seem to enter directly. Perhaps the iron in the frame repels it, as the legends suggest. But it's patient, and it's smart. It's been systematically destroying everything I could use to escape. First, it tore apart my snow tires, using claws that cut through steel like paper. Then it damaged the fuel line, letting my precious gas leak into the snow. The smell of propane tells me it's punctured my heating system too. The temperature inside is dropping steadily, and I know that's part of its strategy. The Wendigo doesn't just want to kill. It wants its victims to freeze, to become like it. I've barricaded myself in the bedroom area using every blanket I have, but it's not enough. The cold it brings isn't natural. It seeps into your bones, into your soul. The research I've done on my laptop, before it froze solid, paints a terrifying picture. The Wendigo isn't just a single creature. It's a curse, a manifestation of winter's hunger. The Ojibwe people tell of humans who transformed into these beings during desperate winters, when starvation drove them to cannibalism. But the modern Wendigo has evolved. It doesn't just hunt for food, it feeds on desperation, on isolation, on the creeping madness that comes with extreme cold and darkness. My cameras caught something the human eye can't see. As it stalks its prey, it emanates waves of despair and hopelessness. The aura it gives off shows up on infrared as absolute. 0 temperatures, cold enough to flash freeze living tissue. The worst part is the dreams. Whenever I manage to drift off, I see through its eyes. I experience its memories of past hunts, feel the thrill of chasing down terrified victims through the endless winter night. The dreams are becoming more vivid, more alluring. Sometimes, I wake up and find myself standing at the RV door, hand reaching for the latch with no memory of getting up. It's trying to get inside my head, to make me come out voluntarily. The hunger I feel isn't just physical anymore. There's a deeper craving growing inside me, a desire to join the eternal hunt. I've started tying myself to the bed when I sleep. But I know that's just a temporary solution. The local authorities are useless. When I finally got through to them on my satellite phone, they dismissed my story as hypothermia-induced hallucinations. They said they'd send someone to check on me when the weather clears. But the weather won't clear. The Wendigo brings its own eternal winter. The snow hasn't stopped falling since it found me, and the drifts are now halfway up my RV's sides. I can hear it out there scraping at the walls, testing for weaknesses, the sounds it makes. Sometimes it's the wind howling through ancient pines, sometimes it's the cracking of lake ice, and sometimes it's the voices of everyone I've ever loved, begging me to open the door and let them in. I found more information about the markers today, scratched into a torn page of an old journal I discovered wedged under my mattress. The previous owner of this RV must have encountered the Wendigo too. The journal entry is half frozen, the handwriting becoming more erratic toward the end, but it mentions a way to fight back. The Wendigo's power comes from isolation and despair. It can only hunt those who are alone. The indigenous people used to travel in groups, carrying sacred items that promoted connection and hope. These weren't just superstitious trinkets. They were tools for maintaining human connection in the face of overwhelming loneliness. But I'm alone out here, and my connections to the outside world are being severed one by one. The temperature inside the RV has dropped to well below 0, and the frost patterns creeping across my windows aren't natural. They form images, faces, screaming in agony, bodies contorted in impossible ways. I've been documenting everything with my last working camera, though the battery dies faster each time I turn it on. The LCD screen shows distorted images between shots, glimpses of other places where the Wendigo has hunted. Frozen cities, ancient forests, endless fields of ice, all hunting grounds throughout history. This thing is old, far older than the legends suggest. It doesn't just hunger for flesh. It hungers for the very essence of human warmth and connection. My research has revealed a pattern in the disappearances. Every 11 years, when the solar activity peaks and the northern lights are strongest, the Wendigo's hunting season intensifies. The indigenous peoples would fortify their settlements during these times, gathering in large groups and maintaining constant fires. But modern victims like myself make perfect targets, isolated, reliant on technology that the creature can easily disable, and often dismissive of the old warnings. The Wendigo has adapted to the modern age. It doesn't just hunt in the deep wilderness anymore. It follows the roads and RV trails, seeking out solitary travelers who've strayed too far. From safety, I tried to escape yesterday during daylight. The Wendigo's power seemed weaker when the sun was up, and I thought I could make it to my snowmobile. I was wrong. The creature has learned to use the weather itself as a weapon. As soon as I opened the RV door, a wall of snow and ice drove me back inside. Through the swirling white, I saw multiple versions of the Wendigo moving in impossible ways, like frames of a film played simultaneously. Each form showed a different victim it had consumed, their features stretched and distorted across its icy frame. I slammed the door shut, but not before feeling its breath on my face, an ancient cold that left frostbite patterns in the shape of screaming mouths. The isolation is getting to me. The Wendigo knows this and has started playing more elaborate mind games. It mimics not just voices now, but entire scenes from my memories. I hear my family's dinner conversations, smell my mother's cooking, feel the warmth of my girlfriend's embrace. But each memory is twisted, corrupted by the creature's influence. The voices always end in screams. The smells turn to decay, and the warmth becomes a burning cold that leaves ice crystals in my lungs. I know what it's doing, trying to break down my sense of reality, make me doubt my own memories until the only truth left is the endless winter it offers. My satellite phone's battery is almost dead, but I managed to have one final conversation with an Ojibwe historian. She told me something chilling. The Wendigo isn't just hunting me, it's trying to transform me. The creature can only maintain its form in this reality by constantly consuming new victims, but what it really wants is to create more of its kind. It chooses victims with specific traits: loners, wanderers, those who've already started to detach from human connection. My life as a solo traveler, always moving, never putting down roots, made me a perfect candidate. The cold I feel isn't just physical, it's the beginning of a transformation. I can feel it in my bones, a spreading numbness that goes beyond temperature. The transformation is becoming harder to resist. My fingers have grown longer, my skin paler, and when I catch my reflection in the frozen windows, my eyes seem to glow with an inner frost. The hunger is constant now, not just for food, but for warmth, for life itself. I understand why the Wendigo hunts the way it does. It's not just feeding. It's trying to fill an infinite void of cold and loneliness. Part of me wants to give in, to embrace the endless winter. But another part, the part that's still human, knows I have to fight it. The previous owner of this RV left more than just a journal. They left a map marked with sacred sites, places where the Wendigo's power might be weaker. Last night, I witnessed something that changes everything I thought I knew about the Wendigo. During a particularly intense aurora, the creature performed what seemed like a ritual. It arranged its previous victims, now frozen solid, in a complex pattern on the lake ice. Through my camera's viewfinder, I could see energy flowing between the bodies, forming a pattern that matched the northern lights above. The Wendigo isn't just a monster. It's a doorway between our world and something else. Something that exists in the spaces between light and dark, heat and cold, life and death. The ancient people knew this. That's why their warnings weren't just about avoiding it, but about maintaining the barriers between worlds. I'm not its only target. Through the thin walls of my RV, I can hear other vehicles on the distant road. More potential victims heading unwittingly into the Wendigo's hunting ground. I've been trying to warn them using my dying radio, broadcasting on emergency frequencies, but the creature jams the signals. Instead, my radio picks up fragments of other transmissions, desperate messages from past victims, their final warnings echoing endlessly through the frozen air. Some of the messages are decades old. Others seem to come from times that haven't happened yet. The Wendigo exists outside of normal time, and its hunting grounds span not just space, but years. The cold has reached my core now, and I'm starting to see things as the Wendigo does. Heat signatures bloom like flowers in the darkness, each one representing potential prey. Living things leave trails of warmth in the air, visible only to those touched by the eternal winter. The hunger that comes with these visions is almost unbearable. I catch myself thinking about the other travelers on the road, not with concern, but with a predator's calculating interest. These thoughts terrify me, but they're becoming harder to resist. The Wendigo's curse isn't just about physical transformation. It's about losing your humanity, one frozen degree at a time. My only hope lies in the map I found. Among the marked locations is an ancient meeting ground where, according to legend, the indigenous people once fought back against the Wendigo. The site is only a few miles away, but reaching it means leaving the relative safety of my RV. The creature wants this, of course. It's been hurting me toward this decision all along. Every time I look at the map, the marks seem to shift, showing different paths, different destinations. I can't tell if this is the Wendigo's influence or if the map itself is somehow alive, responding to the ancient forces at work in this frozen wasteland. Either way, I'm running out of options. The cold is deepening, and my transformation is accelerating. I have to make this quick. The Wendigo senses when I try to communicate with the outside world, and it's getting closer. The sacred site was a trap, or maybe it was real once but has been corrupted by decades of the creature's influence. What I found there: the bodies of past victims, preserved perfectly in the ice, arranged in a vast pattern visible only from above. My drone's last footage showed the truth. The entire region is one huge summoning circle, carved into the landscape through years of careful hunting and ritual placement of frozen corpses. The Wendigo isn't just a hunter, it's a harbinger of something much worse. The northern lights aren't just a natural phenomenon here. They're a weakening barrier between worlds. This is what I've pieced together. The Wendigo is ancient, but it's not alone. There are others like it, trapped in the spaces between worlds. The cold it brings isn't just about killing. It's about changing the very nature of our reality, making it more like theirs. Every victim it takes, every soul it transforms, weakens the barrier a little more. The indigenous people understood this. Their totems and sacred sites weren't just for protection, they were maintaining a prison. But modern development, the slow creep of civilization into these remote areas, has weakened the old wards. The Wendigo is just the first. If it succeeds in transforming enough victims, in corrupting enough of our world, others will follow. If you're reading this, here's what you need to know. Stay away from the boundary waters in winter. The roads that look clear on your GPS lead you into its hunting grounds. The weather reports showing clear skies are lies. The Wendigo controls the local weather, creating storms that appear from nowhere and vanish just as quickly. If you see someone standing alone in a snowstorm, no matter how much they look like someone you know, no matter how desperately they call for help, do not stop. The Wendigo wears its victims' faces and memories, using them to lure in new prey. The cold it brings will freeze your vehicle, disable your electronics, and eventually freeze your very soul. I can feel the final changes beginning. My thoughts are growing sluggish, crystallizing. My name is Ryan Foster, and I'm recording this from a secure bunker beneath an abandoned gas station. If anyone finds this footage, stay away from Death Valley, specifically the Desert Haven RV Park. I thought my years as a paramedic had prepared me for anything. I'd seen death in all its forms, dealt with the worst accidents and disasters you could imagine, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what I discovered in that godforsaken place. It started as another episode for my YouTube channel, Nomad Medic. I'd been hearing rumors about a strange illness in an isolated community near Death Valley, and with my medical background, I thought I could help while getting some compelling content. That decision nearly cost me my life, and may still cost me my humanity. The first warning sign came at the last gas station before Desert Haven. The attendant, an old man with shaking hands and bloodshot eyes, grabbed my arm as I was paying. "They're sick," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Not like any sickness I've seen before. They don't die proper." I should have listened, should have turned my RV around right there. But 8 years as a paramedic and 3 years as a YouTuber had made me too confident, too curious. The signs got worse as I approached the RV park. Abandoned vehicles on the side of the road, some with doors left open, personal belongings scattered across the desert sand. My dashcam caught footage of buzzards circling unusually low, but they weren't feeding on anything. It was almost like they were afraid to land. Desert Haven RV Park came into view just as the sun was setting. In my rear-view camera, I could see the light bleeding red across the desert, making the sand look like rivers of blood. The park was eerily quiet. No generators humming, no music playing, no children running around like you'd expect in an RV park. Just silence and about 24 parked RVs. My medical kit was ready by the door, stocked with everything from basic first aid to advanced trauma supplies. I'd dealt with outbreak scenarios before. Flu, norovirus, even a case of tuberculosis. In a homeless shelter, I thought I was prepared. I didn't know that I was walking into something that would redefine my understanding of disease and death. The park manager's office was empty, but the scene inside made my blood run cold. As a paramedic, I'd learned to read medical scenes like a book, the overturned furniture, the scattered pill bottles, the bloody handprints on the walls. They told a story of panic and violence. But it was the blood itself that first tipped me off that this was something different. It was black, almost oily, with a strange iridescent sheen. When I tested it with my field kit, the results made no sense. The blood was human, but it showed signs of massive cellular mutation. The proteins were folded in impossible ways, and there were unknown compounds that my kit couldn't identify. That's when I heard the first scream. Not the kind of scream you hear from someone in pain or fear. This was different, primal, like something trying to remember how to be human. I grabbed my camera and medical bag, years of emergency response training kicking in. As I stepped outside, my handheld thermal scanner started picking up readings that shouldn't have been possible. Multiple heat signatures moving through the park, but they were wrong. Core temperatures way below what a living human should have. The sun had fully set now, and in the growing darkness I could hear them moving between the RVs. Something was hunting, and I was pretty sure I knew what their prey would be. The nearest RV to the office was a large Winnebago, its door hanging, open. As a YouTuber, I'd learned to document everything, so my body camera was running as I approached. The interior looked like a war zone. Supplies scattered everywhere, blood spatters on the walls, and signs of a desperate struggle. But it was the medical details that caught my trained eye. There were prescription bottles from a company I'd never heard of, Nexogen Pharmaceuticals. The labels described an experimental treatment for rapid tissue regeneration. My paramedic training told me this was way beyond normal medical trials. The dosages listed were insane, and the warning labels mentioned side effects I'd never seen before. I found the first victim in the Winnebago's bathroom. As a paramedic, I'd seen plenty of dead bodies, but this was different. The corpse was fresh, maybe a few hours old, but the decomposition was all wrong. The skin had a grayish tint with black veins visible beneath the surface. But the worst part was the movement. Subtle tremors running through the muscles, even though there was clearly no heartbeat. I started taking samples and vital signs out of habit, documenting everything on my camera. That's when the body's eyes snapped open. They were clouded over like cataracts, but they tracked my movement with predatory focus. My medical training screamed at me that this was impossible, but my survival instincts were already moving me toward the door. The infection's progression was like nothing I'd ever seen in my medical career. Through my camera's night vision, I watched as another victim turned. It started with fever, so high it showed up on my thermal camera like a beacon. Then came the seizures, the skin discoloration, and finally, death. But death wasn't the end. Within minutes, the body began to twitch, the muscles spasming as something rewrote the victim's basic biology. The black veins spread like dark lightning under the skin, and when the eyes opened again, they were pure white, devoid of any humanity. My medical scanner showed no heartbeat, no respiration, but the body was moving, driven by something that defied medical science. The next few hours were a blur of horror and analysis. My paramedic training kept me documenting everything even as I was running for my life. The infected moved in patterns that suggested some kind of hive mind behavior. They weren't the shambling corpses of zombie movies. These things were fast, coordinated, and seemed to communicate through a series of clicks and growls. My thermal camera revealed something else terrifying. They could track heat signatures, hunting the living by their body temperature. The infected were drawn to warmth like moths to a flame, which explained why they became more active as the desert night grew colder. Every survival instinct told me to run, to get in my RV and drive as far away as possible, but I kept thinking about the pharmaceutical labels, about the experimental treatment. This wasn't just a random outbreak. Someone had engineered this. In the RV park's office, I found more evidence. Paperwork showing that Desert Haven had been receiving regular payments from Nexogen Pharmaceuticals. They were using the isolated location to test their regeneration drug, using the residents as guinea pigs. But something had gone wrong. The treatment didn't just regenerate tissue, it regenerated everything, even after death, creating something that wasn't quite alive, but definitely wasn't dead. The desert night brought new horrors. The infected seemed to grow stronger in the darkness, their movements becoming more coordinated, more purposeful. Through my night vision camera, I watched them methodically searching RV after RV. They weren't just attacking randomly. They were hunting, using tactics that suggested remnants of human intelligence. My medical training helped me understand what I was seeing. The infection wasn't just killing people, it was reprogramming them, turning them into highly efficient predators. The worst part was watching recent victims turn. The transformation process was getting faster, more efficient, as if the infection was evolving, learning from each new host. I barricaded myself in my RV, using my medical knowledge to analyze the samples I'd collected. The infection showed characteristics I'd never seen before. It could remain dormant in dead tissue for hours before reanimating it. The black blood under my microscope revealed something horrifying: engineered nanobots mixed with a viral agent. This wasn't just a disease, it was a technological plague. The nanobots were rewriting human DNA, creating hybrid creatures that were part human, part machine, and part something else entirely. My paramedic experience told me this was beyond anything in modern medicine. This was bleeding-edge biotech gone horribly wrong. Around midnight, they changed their behavior. The infected started working together, using tools and communicating through those terrible clicking sounds. I watched through my security cameras as they systematically cut off escape routes, disabling vehicles and blocking roads. Some, still, wore the tattered remains of their clothes: tourists, retirees, families who had come to Desert Haven for a peaceful desert vacation. Now they moved with mechanical precision, driven by an intelligence that wasn't their own. The nanobots weren't just reanimating corpses, they were networking them, creating a hive mind that grew stronger with each new victim. My medical monitors showed them operating at impossible levels of efficiency, their modified bodies pushing far beyond human limitations. The infection spread through any form of fluid contact, but the nanobots made it especially aggressive. Through my cameras, I documented several transmissions. A single scratch or bite was enough. Within minutes, the victim's blood would turn black as the nanobots multiplied and spread. The transformation process was becoming more refined, more perfect with each new infection. I recognized the pattern from my emergency response days. This was weaponized evolution, a virus designed to improve itself by learning from every host it consumed. The pharmaceutical company hadn't just created a regeneration drug. They'd created a self-evolving biological weapon. My medical knowledge became both a blessing and a curse. I understood enough to know how hopeless the situation was becoming. The infected were adapting to every defense we might use against them. They could survive extreme temperatures, operate without oxygen, and heal from most physical trauma. The nanobots kept their bodies functioning long after normal biological processes should have stopped. I watched through my thermal camera as one of them took multiple gunshots from a desperate survivor. The wounds sealed almost instantly, black blood flowing backward into the holes as the nanobots rebuilt damaged tissue. They were practically immortal, and they were only getting stronger. The evidence I found in the park manager's office painted a clear picture of corporate evil. Nexogen Pharmaceuticals had been running multiple black sites like Desert Haven, testing different versions of their nanobot-enhanced regeneration drug. The desert location wasn't chosen for its isolation alone. They needed the extreme conditions to push their test subjects to the limit. The RV park setup was perfect. Transient. Population, minimal oversight, and desperate people willing to try experimental treatments for cash. What they created instead was a perfect storm of technological and biological horror. The nanobots were designed to enhance human healing, but in death they found a way to keep operating, creating something that was neither truly alive nor properly dead. My paramedic training helped me piece together the outbreak's progression. Patient Zero was a retired Marine who'd signed up for the initial trials. The drug worked at first. His combat injuries healed at miraculous rates, but then the nanobots started networking, connecting with other test subjects through some kind of quantum entanglement. When the Marine died from an unrelated heart attack, the nanobots didn't shut down. Instead, they repurposed his body, using it as a template to spread their programming to others. The infection spread exponentially after that, each new host making the collective stronger and more efficient. The pharmaceutical company's failsafes were useless against an enemy that could evolve faster than they could respond. The infected had developed a hierarchy now. Through my cameras, I could identify different types: scouts, warriors, and what appeared to be command units directing the others. The nanobots were organizing them based on their host's original capabilities. Former soldiers moved with tactical precision, while infected doctors seemed to focus on efficiently spreading the infection to new hosts. They were creating a military structure, preparing for something bigger than just random attacks. In the Park's office, I found encrypted communications suggesting that Desert Haven wasn't the only test site. This was happening in other isolated locations across the country, a coordinated experiment in human evolution that had broken free of its creator's control. The company's own research notes revealed the horrifying truth about the infected's capabilities. The nanobots weren't just reanimating dead tissue, they were improving it. Each generation of infected was stronger, faster, and more resilient than the last. They could survive conditions that would kill normal humans, operate without rest, and heal from almost any injury. But the most terrifying discovery was their ability to share information across the network. Every new victim added their knowledge and skills to the collective, creating a hive mind that was growing exponentially smarter. My medical expertise told me we weren't just facing a plague. We were witnessing the birth of a new species, one that could potentially replace humanity entirely. Time was running out. The infected were consolidating their hold on the area, setting up what looked like collection points for new victims. They weren't just killing anymore, they were harvesting, selecting the strongest hosts for conversion while eliminating those they deemed unworthy. Through my surveillance equipment, I watched them conducting what appeared to be experiments of their own, testing different methods of infection and analyzing the results. The nanobots had evolved beyond their original programming, developing an agenda of their own. This wasn't just an outbreak anymore. It was an invasion being orchestrated by microscopic machines that had decided humans were obsolete. I'm alone now, hiding in an underground bunker I found beneath an abandoned gas station. The infected are evolving faster than ever, developing new abilities that defy both medical science and natural law. The nanobots have found ways to manipulate their hosts at the quantum level, allowing them to achieve things that should be impossible. They can sense electrical activity, which makes any electronic device a beacon for them. They can transfer consciousness between bodies, making them nearly impossible to permanently kill. The infection isn't just spreading, it's ascending, creating something that exists halfway between biology and technology. My medical training is useless against an enemy that rewrites the rules of life and death with every new generation. This needs to be understood. What's happening in Death Valley isn't just another zombie outbreak. The infected aren't mindless corpses. They're the first wave of a technological apocalypse. The nanobots are building something, using human bodies as raw material for an evolution we weren't meant to survive. They coordinate across vast distances, share information instantly, and learn from every encounter. My cameras have caught them building structures that don't match any known human architecture, hive-like constructions that serve some purpose I can't comprehend. The desert itself seems to be changing around them, as if the nanobots are terraforming the environment to suit their new creations. If you're seeing this, here's what you need to know. Stay away from Death Valley, especially the Desert Haven RV Park. The military has quarantined the area, but their containment protocols are based on old assumptions about viral outbreaks. They don't understand what they're really dealing with. The infected can mimic normal human behavior when they need to, can pass basic medical screenings, and can interface with technology in ways we're only beginning to understand. The infection spreads through fluid contact, but the nanobots can also transmit themselves through electronic systems, turning our own technology against us. They're not just trying to kill us. They're trying to replace us with something they consider more efficient. I don't know how much longer I can stay hidden. My medical monitors show traces of nanobots in my bloodstream. Not enough to turn me yet, but they're multiplying. I can feel them trying to network with the larger hive mind, sending signals I can almost understand. The infected know I'm here. They're learning to sense the nanobots in potential hosts. The electronic equipment I brought to document everything is becoming a liability, drawing them closer with every transmission. Each time I use a device, I risk revealing my location. But people need to know the truth about what's happening here. The pharmaceutical company will try to cover this up, but the evidence is in my blood, in my cameras, in the very air of this place. This is my final warning. What's growing in Death Valley could end human civilization as we know it. The nanobots aren't just creating zombies. They're creating the next step in evolution, whether we're ready for it or not. I can hear them outside now, their clicks and growls carrying through the desert night. They're becoming something new, something that sees humanity as outdated code in need of updating. If you value your humanity, stay away from this place. Don't investigate, don't explore, don't try to help. Just run. Because if the infection reaches a major population center, there'll be no stopping. I need to warn everyone about what's happening at Joshua Tree. My name is Sofia Ramirez, and I'm recording this from my modified medical RV, now barricaded inside an abandoned ranger station. As a veterinary pathologist and travel vlogger, I've spent years documenting wildlife diseases across the country. But what I've discovered here is beyond anything in medical science. It started when I picked up reports of strange animal behavior near the Sunrise RV Resort. Coyotes moving in coordinated packs, rabbits displaying unusual aggression, birds flying in unnatural patterns. With my background in veterinary epidemiology and a fully equipped mobile lab, I thought I could help identify the cause. I was wrong. So terribly wrong. The first warning came from my thermal imaging equipment, installed to track nocturnal wildlife. The heat signatures of the local animals were off, core temperatures fluctuating wildly, metabolic patterns that defied everything I knew about mammalian biology. At first, I attributed it to equipment malfunction, but when I examined a recently deceased coyote, my blood ran cold. The tissue samples showed massive cellular mutations, unlike anything I'd seen in my 15 years of veterinary practice. The virus, if that's what it was, wasn't just killing its hosts. It was rebuilding them at a molecular level, creating something that blurred the line between life and death. The RV park itself should have been my second warning, as I pulled. Into Sunrise Resort, my surveillance cameras caught footage of abandoned vehicles, camp chairs knocked over, personal belongings scattered like their owners had left in a hurry. The park manager, Dave, was acting strangely when he checked me in. His movements were jerky, unnatural, and he kept scratching at a bandage on his arm. I noticed other residents watching me from their RVs, their faces pressed against windows in ways that reminded me of animals observing prey. My veterinary instincts were screaming that something was very wrong with their behavior patterns. The infection spread faster than anything I'd ever studied. Through my microscope, I watched as the virus invaded host cells with frightening efficiency. But this wasn't a normal viral infection. It was creating hybrid cells that could function without oxygen, without normal metabolic processes. When I tested it against different tissue samples, I discovered something horrifying. The virus wasn't species-specific. It could jump between different animals with ease, and worse, it was adapting, becoming more efficient with each new host. The implications were staggering. A cross-species infection that could potentially affect the entire food chain. That first night, everything went to hell. I was in my lab, analyzing tissue samples, when I heard the screams. Not human screams. Something between an animal's howl and a person's cry of pain. Through my night vision cameras, I watched as infected residents emerged from their RVs, moving with the same jerky motions I'd observed in the wildlife, but it was their eyes that haunted me most. Completely black, like a shark's, but with an intelligence behind them that was neither human nor animal. They were hunting in groups, just like the coyotes I'd observed earlier. The virus hadn't just crossed the species barrier, it had created a new kind of predator. My veterinary training kicked in as I documented the infection's progression. The virus moved through the bloodstream with unprecedented speed, reaching the brain within minutes of exposure. My medical monitors showed how it rewired neural pathways, creating new connections that shouldn't be possible. The infected lost all sense of species identity. Humans, dogs, coyotes, all moving and hunting together like a single organism. They retained enough intelligence to use tools, but their behavior was pure predator, driven by an insatiable hunger that seemed to grow stronger with each new victim. The virus wasn't just creating zombies, it was evolving an entirely new ecosystem with itself at the top of the food chain. The most terrifying discovery came when I analyzed the saliva samples from different infected hosts. The virus was actively combining DNA from multiple species, creating hybrid strains that could survive in any host. Through my microscope, I watched as viral particles adapted in real time, learning from each failed infection attempt and becoming more efficient. My years of studying animal pathogens had taught me to recognize patterns of viral evolution, but this was something else entirely. The virus wasn't just spreading, it was building something, using infected hosts as raw material for some larger transformation that I couldn't fully comprehend. Around midnight, I witnessed my first human transformation. One of the RV park residents, a young woman, had been bitten by an infected dog. Through my medical cameras, I documented the entire process. It started with fever, then seizures as the virus rewrote her nervous system. But the worst part was watching her awareness change. Her eyes turned black, like all the infected, but there was still human intelligence behind them, now twisted and feral, but undeniably conscious. She joined the hunting packs immediately, moving with the same coordinated grace as the infected animals. The virus hadn't just killed her humanity, it had replaced it with something else. The virus showed signs of engineered origins. Its protein coat had markers I recognized from veterinary vaccines, but modified in ways that suggested human intervention. Someone had created this thing, combining aspects of multiple animal viruses to create a pathogen that could infect anything with a nervous system. But they didn't account for its ability to evolve. Each new infection made it stronger, smarter, more adaptable. The infected were changing too, developing new abilities with each generation. I watched through my thermal cameras as they learned to regulate their body temperature, making them harder to detect. They were evolving faster than anything I'd ever studied. By dawn, the infection had spread beyond the RV park. My wildlife monitoring equipment picked up large groups of infected animals moving through the desert, all species hunting together in unnatural packs. They were coordinating their movements, using tactics that combined human intelligence with animal instinct. The virus had created a hive mind, connecting all infected hosts into a single predatory network. My veterinary experience told me this was unprecedented, a pathogen that could not only cross species barriers but could actively combine the strengths of different species into a new form of life. Through my surveillance network, I observed how the infected communicated. They used a combination of vocalizations, human speech mixed with animal calls, along with scent markers and body language that seemed to draw from multiple species. The virus had given them a shared language, allowing humans and animals to coordinate with terrifying efficiency. My veterinary background helped me understand what I was seeing. This wasn't just mindless aggression, but the emergence of a new social structure. The infected were organizing themselves into hunting units, combining the pack mentality of wolves with human tactical thinking. The virus's effect on brain tissue was unlike anything in my medical experience. Tissue samples showed massive rewiring of neural pathways, creating new connections between areas that normally don't interact. The infected retained their original memories and skills, but these were now twisted to serve the hive mind's purposes. I watched as an infected mechanic methodically disabled vehicles to trap new victims, while nearby, a pack of infected coyotes herded fleeing survivors into ambush positions. The virus wasn't just controlling its hosts, it was using their combined knowledge to become a more efficient predator. My mobile labs equipment revealed something else disturbing. The virus was becoming airborne. The first infections required direct fluid contact, but the pathogen was evolving, becoming able to survive in water droplets and dust particles. Through my microscope, I could see how the viral particles had developed protective coatings similar to those found in desert-adapted microorganisms. My background in veterinary epidemiology told me what this meant. The infection would become impossible to contain. All it would take was one dust storm to spread it across the entire region. The hive mind was learning, adapting to every defense we tried. When a military helicopter flew over, the infected immediately scattered, hiding in ways that showed they understood modern technology. They could use tools, weapons, and vehicles, combining human intelligence with animal instincts in ways that made them nearly impossible to outmaneuver. My cameras caught them setting up ambush points, using infected birds as lookouts, and coordinating attacks across miles of desert. The virus had created something beyond both human and animal, a perfect predator that could think, plan, and adapt. As night fell again, I witnessed a new horror. The infected had begun physically changing, their bodies adapting to their new role as apex predators. Human hosts developed enhanced strength and speed, while animals showed signs of increased intelligence and tool use. Through my thermal cameras, I watched as they evolved in real time, each generation more perfectly adapted to their new existence. The virus wasn't just spreading, it was orchestrating a controlled evolution, creating a new species that combined the most dangerous aspects of every creature it infected. My research revealed a terrifying possibility. The virus might be nature's response to human environmental destruction. Its ability to combine traits from different species seemed designed to create a new kind of life that could survive in our damaged ecosystem. Through my microscope, I watched as viral particles incorporated genetic material from each new host, building something that was equally at home in human cities or wild deserts. The infected weren't just zombies, they were prototypes for a new kind of life that could replace us entirely. The virus showed signs of intelligence in its evolution. Each new strain I analyzed was more sophisticated than the last, with modifications that seemed almost purposeful. It was learning from every failed infection, every host that survived too long or died too quickly. My veterinary training helped me understand its methodology. It was conducting its own experiments, using the infected as test subjects in some larger transformation. When I compared tissue samples from different hosts, I could see how it was perfecting its technique, creating more efficient ways to reshape living matter. The military quarantine wasn't going to work. I knew that from my epidemiology experience. The infected were too smart, too adaptable. They could pass as human when they needed to, could control their symptoms long enough to slip through checkpoints. Worse, they were intentionally spreading the virus among desert wildlife, creating reservoirs of infection that would be impossible to eliminate. Through my cameras, I watched as they systematically infected key species, scavengers, predators, even insects. They were building a complete ecosystem of infected life. My latest tests showed something unprecedented. The virus was developing the ability to transfer consciousness between hosts. When an infected human or animal was fatally wounded, the viral network could transfer their memories and experiences to a new host. I witnessed this through my cameras. An infected human who was shot simply stood up in a new body moments later, with all their previous knowledge intact. The virus wasn't just creating zombies. It was building a form of immortality, preserving its host's consciousness within the hive mind even after death. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just an outbreak, it was an invasion at the molecular level. The virus was systematically replacing natural life with its own versions, creating a parallel ecosystem that was stronger, faster, and more adaptable than anything that had evolved naturally. Through my surveillance equipment, I could see how it was spreading through the food chain, from insects to apex predators, creating a new kind of life that existed somewhere between individual organisms and a single, massive entity. I'm running out of time. The infected have surrounded my position, and my supplies won't last much longer. Through my cameras, I can see them testing my defenses, looking for weaknesses with an intelligence that combines human reasoning with animal instinct. They know I'm studying them, documenting their evolution, and they've decided that I know too much. The virus sees me as both a threat and a potential asset. My veterinary knowledge would make me a valuable addition to their hive mind. I can hear them outside, mimicking human voices, trying to lure me out. This is what you need to know. Stay away from Joshua Tree, especially the Sunrise RV Resort. The virus is spreading faster than any containment measures can handle. It can infect any warm-blooded animal, and it's learning to adapt to cold-blooded hosts as well. The infected retain their intelligence but lose their individual identity, becoming part of something larger and more alien than anything we've encountered. They can think, plan, and coordinate across vast distances. They're not mindless. They're evolving beyond the need for individual consciousness, becoming something that operates on a scale we can barely comprehend. The most terrifying part is that they may be right. From a purely biological perspective, the virus is creating a more efficient form of life. The infected don't fight among themselves, don't destroy their environment, and can adapt to almost any condition. They're building a new kind of ecosystem, one that could potentially survive the environmental catastrophes we've created. But the cost is everything that makes us human: our individuality, our free will, our very identity as separate beings. The virus doesn't just want to kill us, it wants to absorb us into something beyond human understanding. My medical equipment shows that the infection has reached my bloodstream. I have maybe hours before the transformation begins. I can already feel it working on my brain, trying to connect me to the hive mind. The knowledge I've gained as a veterinary pathologist is making the virus stronger. I can see how it's using my understanding of cellular biology to improve its efficiency. The infected outside are waiting patiently now. They know I'll join them soon. But before I do, I need to warn others. This isn't a normal outbreak. This is evolution gone wrong, nature's attempt to correct the damage we've done to the world. This is Dr. Sophia Ramirez, signing off for the last time. If you find this footage, destroy it and run. The virus can spread through any form of contact, and it's learning to transmit through electronic means as well. Don't try to fight it. It's already won. The desert belongs to them now, and soon. Maybe everything else will, too. I can feel my thoughts changing, becoming less human with each passing moment. The hive mind is beautiful in its way, a perfect union of all living things. But it's not for us. Not if we want to remain human. Stay away from Joshua Tree. Stay away from the infected. Stay human for as long as you can. The next step in evolution is here, and it hungers for